You've most likely asked yourself this question more times than you can remember. When will Bitcoin be worth $15,000 or $20,000 again? Or conversely, have heard statements similar to, Bitcoin will reach $50,000, $100,000, $500,000, or $1 million, copious amounts of times. A better question, when and how will Bitcoin reach mass adoption, a singularity, to achieve such a high-valued coin? Let's look at the current year, Bitcoin's performance history, and where the future may lead. Looking at the yearly Bitcoin chart, we get an idea of how Bitcoin has evolved and the cycle it has formed up till now. From the early days of Bitcoin, before most people, popular YouTubers, mainstream commentators were talking about the asset, little to moderate volatility occurred. Up until about 2016, Bitcoin was still an obscure asset used mainly for precarious transactions on the dark web, notably on the now infamous Silk Road website. Bitcoin's first real parabolic rise was in the summer of 2017. This was the first time the average person could be heard mentioning it in everyday conversations. Of course, the mainstream media also started to report on it, all adding to the fever pitch. This was a time in Bitcoin's recent history where the asset's alluring power was unquestionable. However, Bitcoin's hyperbolic price surge, as I will explain, was not based in legitimate use case. A large majority of Bitcoin's initial hysteria was driven by the popularity of emerging Ponzi schemes. Another now infamous website called BitConnect. The beginning of this parabolic rise, one of BitConnect's biggest promoters, Trevon James, BitConnect was giving back to their investors of up to 2% daily, based on their claim of a volatility bot they were using to trade. No proof of any bot was ever shown. Trevon's videos were getting 30 to 50,000 views, all showing him cashing out into Bitcoin. I am merely talking about what was happening then, and in no way is this about the promoters of BitConnect, as there were other large YouTubers, but only to point to the fact Bitcoin's meteoric rise was largely fueled by BitConnect and the plethora of corrupt lending platforms following in its wake. For better or for worse, many new people were brought into the cryptoverse because of this fever pitch. And due to the anonymous nature of Bitcoin, many scams are prevalent to this day. On December of 2017, Bitcoin had an all-time high of $20,000 USD. In the days and weeks thereafter, the USD value of Bitcoin started to steadily fall. To the shock and misfortune of all new investors, their freshly bought Bitcoin had lost its value. However, most of these new people were never given the most basic advice about investing into crypto. Bitcoin never goes up in a straight line and never falls in a straight line, and corrections are always part of the market. A closer look at Bitcoin's historical snapshot would have revealed similar pullbacks. During the crash down to $3,500 in December of 2018, the fear and speculation by the mainstream media claiming Bitcoin was a bubble started to spiral out of control. The media will always be largely anti-crypto as they are funded by governments and the centralized banking system. Since the initial rise of Bitcoin back in 2017, there have been many Fortune 500 companies that have either adopted Bitcoin payments or are in the process of doing so. Many traditional financial institutions have invested into Bitcoin and have even bought major crypto exchanges in the bid to cash in on the emerging crypto space. Notably, Goldman Sachs purchased Poloniex in February of 2018 for a whopping $400 million. No small sign that adoption is underway. However, mass adoption of Bitcoin is still something that remains to be seen. Other companies including Microsoft, Whole Foods, Overstock, Namecheap, Starbucks, Newegg, KFC, and Amazon's Twitch have all included Bitcoin as a payment option within their business model. There are even rumors of Amazon possibly accepting Bitcoin at some time in the future. Although currently users can still buy Amazon gift cards using the coin. If Amazon decides to accept Bitcoin directly as a means of payment on the platform, the market share of Bitcoin would be sure to reach new levels of adoption, as millions of new people would be exposed to Bitcoin. It's my estimation that Bitcoin will need to have more users than the current 1.3% worldwide for Amazon to embrace the currency. Accepting Bitcoin would be a voluntary move on the part of the company, as opposed to filling a need by the consumer.
An Amazon subsidiary has registered 3 cryptocurrency-related web domains. The records show that they were registered yesterday, and they are AmazonEthereum.com, AmazonCryptocurrency.com, and AmazonCryptocurrencies.com. They're all linked to Amazon Technologies, which is a subsidiary that has been linked to past patent filings by the company in the past. Now, this was first reported by industry news site Domain NameWire, which also notes that this may simply be a move by Amazon to protect its brand. Back in 2013, Amazon secured AmazonBitcoin.com, which currently just redirects back to the e-commerce site's main page. We reached out to Amazon and will update you when we hear back. But also want to note, last week at Money 2020, I did speak to Amazon's VP of Pay, and I asked him if they were looking at accepting cryptocurrencies as a form of payment in the future. And he said no, because their customers simply have not asked for it.
So how many Bitcoin users are there currently? According to chainanalysis.com, there are about 460 million Bitcoin addresses in total. About 37% of these are economically relevant. Additionally, 86% of these belong to a named service. The remaining addresses are largely used to facilitate payments. Specifically, this maps out different types of addresses and identifies the 172 million that matter most from an economic standpoint. Still, only some addresses are relevant. Of these, and the takeaway here, only 27 million actually hold Bitcoin. But that does not necessarily give us the amount of people using Bitcoin, as there are several reasons that this may be misleading. For instance, one person can have many addresses and wallets. Services can hold Bitcoin in one address that belongs to many people, and many people don't move Bitcoins off the exchanges. A second common method to estimate the number of owners is to look at exchanges and check the numbers of accounts. Some customers may open an exchange account, buy Bitcoin, and then sell it and leave an empty wallet. Another problem with this method is a user may have multiple accounts. A user can have unlimited exchange accounts. One, for example, might have an account with Coinbase, Kraken, or Gemini. This creates inaccuracies in estimating how many people use and own Bitcoin. One recent study showed that about 11% of Americans own Bitcoin, which would mean about 30 million Bitcoin owners in America. Another study found that about 5% of Europeans own Bitcoin. That's about 37 million owners. Just these two studies together would put the total number of Bitcoin owners in America and Europe at around 67 million users combined. But there are only 20 million Bitcoin addresses with more than $1 worth of Bitcoin in circulation. So the total number of Bitcoin owners depends on how we want to define own. If owning Bitcoin means storing at least $1 worth of it in a wallet, there can't be more than about 20 million owners. If owning Bitcoin includes storing at least $1 worth of the asset in a centralized exchange or wallet, the numbers published by the surveys start to seem reasonable. And the truth is, most owners of Bitcoin likely do store their coins on centralized exchanges. So, considering all that, it seems quite likely that there are over 100 million owners of Bitcoin in the world. Now that we have a good understanding of how Bitcoin has been utilized and to what extent adoption has progressed, there are some very important things to consider in order to see the big picture for Bitcoin. Currently, Bitcoin is more of a store of value as opposed to a liquid asset in comparison to traditional fiat. It is heavily correlated to gold. This is an outstanding feature that has developed for Bitcoin and proves that indeed it has an inherent value. Quite possibly the most obvious reason to date that Bitcoin is not in everyone's wallet across the world is the sheer difficulty it is to understand and use for the common person. There will need to be a fundamental shift in marketing and acceptance for using it, as well as a deliberate technological jump for ease of use to spend it in everyday situations, like a simple email forward. So again, as crypto enthusiasts, we understand why Bitcoin is so much better than fiat. But again, the average citizen does not. It is to be noted that, and in my opinion, before Bitcoin has a chance to reach a singularity, the blockchain itself will need to be used widely first as a standard of doing transactions between people and businesses. This may be a double-edged sword, as the move to centralized digital fiat currencies is now underway. So although Bitcoin ultimately, in my opinion, will only grow in value, it will be a long road ahead to see if indeed it will be the one predominant currency used in the world. It would be interesting to see if, like gold and its finite reserve, if Bitcoin could also be used in such a way towards digital fiat currency one day. Although in my estimation, the day of backed fiat currencies by a finite asset is a thing of the past, as it is too easy for banks to just issue as much fiat as they choose. All this being said, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are only growing in popularity every day. So as more and more businesses and companies accept crypto, the more your Bitcoin will be worth in the coming time ahead. The next major psychological barrier to pass, in my estimation, is $20,000 for Bitcoin. And I believe that every 10K will be another hurdle crossed, with $50,000 being the next major plateau. To reach, let's say, a $1 million coin, Bitcoin will need to increase in value tens of thousands of dollars at a time, and the amount of money flowing into crypto will need to increase exponentially. So like most things worthwhile, it will take time for Bitcoin to gain additional footing amongst the public and institutions. But just like in 2017, the next hyper bull run that occurs, and it may be coming sooner than you think, will again increase its visibility around the world, adding to further adoption. One thing is for sure, Bitcoin is not a bubble. It has proven that time and again. Now there are too many big players holding it, and there are an increased number of major players adopting crypto and Bitcoin. So the singularity for Bitcoin may be an obscure notion for some at this time in history, or maybe, just maybe, you are witnessing the unfolding of this event. in front of your very eyes. If you like this type of content, help grow my channel and leave a like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. I'll be creating more crypto documentaries like this in the near future. If you're interested in earning more Bitcoin, make sure to catch my trading videos